We are live.
We are live. And we didn't expect to be live. All right, so let's play the intro. So here we are finally. Hey, welcome to another Ask the Trainer. And today we are going to do another Ask Me Anything session. It's been a while. I'm here with Ellie and with Noseman. I'm Jonas. We're from the Maxon training team. And yeah, before we start, I'm going to take care of the housekeeping a little bit. So let me share the screen. That should already be working. And the site you can see here is the Maxon events page. You can get there when you go to the Maxon website, maxon.net. And here under news, events, you can see or find this site where we can have a look at all the exciting shows that we are doing. Also, some live events are in here. But you can see that tomorrow there's going to be another VFX and Chill episode. On Monday, there is another demystifying post-production episode, week 4 of Universe for Editors. And on Tuesday, right, Ellie, you're going to do a live breakdown again of the little image here that you can see.
I am, yes, some procedural textures.
And a lot more. I already want to advertise the Ask the Trainer special next week because this is going to be exciting. We know that it's going to be exciting, although we cannot tell you yet what it's about. So just in case you didn't watch one of the streams and you want to catch up with these, you can always go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And here you can find all the streams that we did, all the recordings of those streams, and a little bit more like quick tips and stuff like that. Also, let me go to this one here. We have Cineversity. So cineversity.maxon.net would be the address to get to Cineversity. And here, especially when you are a beginner, it doesn't matter which product here or which software, you can get started with Cinema 4D, Redshift, Universe, ZBrush, and all the others as well. So there is a lot of exciting stuff to learn. All right, then the next thing that I just quickly want to mention, if you want to become a certified user, you can always go to the Maxon certification site, which is under Learn and Certification. And here you can find a topics list. And these are all the topics that could be part of that certification test. So definitely check that out. Some of these topics here are populated with links. And it's an exciting thing to see where you know everything or where you can improve. Yeah, and then before we really start, I want to have a look at the Maxon merch store here, because what we usually do is we give away free t-shirts, and this session is no exception. We're going to give away a free t-shirt. So if you go to that website, and let me quickly bring up the link, and we're also going to share it in the chat. So this is the link. It's a little bit long, so it might be better to use the chat version and just copy paste it. And then you will be forwarded to a site where you have to type in a code. And this is the code, Universe for Editors. And then you get to this site and you can pick one t-shirt and order it for free. You only have to pay for the shipping. All right, so that's pretty much it for the housekeeping. And yeah, as I said, today we're going to have another Ask Me Anything session. And I ask you to prepare your questions. There are already quite a few things coming in. But there was one question that we found on, where did we find it? It wasn't last week's, or 2 weeks ago in the Ask the Trainer stream, where Moses asked about how to export splines, animated splines, simulated splines as Alembic. And I think Noseman is going to take care of that, right? So I'm going to throw the screen at you.
Throw the screen at me.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. This is my screen.
Hello.
Thank you very much for
Hello,
watching
screen.
the show. So a couple of things you need to remember. The old Cineversity still exists, cineversity.com, where you can watch thousands of older tutorials. And if you can adjust for the differences in the interface and certain other things, 90% of the information is still relevant. And there's a huge body of knowledge over there. And especially go and check out Dr. Sassy's tutorials. Very technical, very detailed, so you can understand things. Number 2, watch tomorrow's VFX and Chill, please. Actually, I'm not asking you to do it. I'm telling you that you're going to do yourselves a favor if you watch it, as if all the other shows were not nearly perfect. So it's fun and entertaining and educational. So yeah, I'm going to deal with a couple of things today. The one is the question by Moses Amoniel. And the question actually was, how do you, and I can read it pretty verbatim somewhere here. When I'm looking, here's my live feedback monitor. There is the YouTube delayed. There is the chat. There is the camera, and there's my screen, just giving you a bit of an explanation where I'm looking at. So let me just find that. Okay, so how do you bake animated spline? And I think it has to do with Alembic. There are a couple of things you need to know about splines. I'm going to show you with ropes. So there is some procedural animation. The Alembic, although it can handle objects that their topology changes, there's a bit of a let's say catch when it comes to that. So let's talk about Alembics first, and then let's talk about baking stuff. So let's go in. This is the other topic I'm going to touch upon. Let's go to these ropes over here. So I'm going to just go and create a simple cube and show you. So it has 1 and 1 and 1 segments. Okay. And let's assume I want to animate the segments, and over, let's say, 80 frames, I can turn everything else off. We go to more segments. There you go. So here we have an object that is changing topology. And changing topology, the predominant thing is that the point number changes. And if you export this as an Alembic file, and generally when I'm doing generators, it's not always required. I always add a connect object on top and turn off the weld, because you can add as many objects as you want, and it's going to be exported as a single object. So I'm going to go here and do a bake as Alembic and delete. Okay. Now, what I want you to pay attention to, if you zoom in with a magnifying glass, is that the Alembic here has a red A. The A indicates an animated object. The red means that the polygon, the point count is changing. Therefore, there's no interpolation in the animation. For each state of the object, each state, it saves a different object, because these are essentially different objects. So you will have various, depending on how you're using the cube or the spline or anything whose points are changing, you are going to have issues with the Alembic. If, on the other hand, your cube was not changing this and was changing, I don't know, the scaling in a particular dimension, here you're changing only the positions of the points. So essentially what it does, it saves one object and the point positions in every frame. So bake as Alembic and delete, and you will see that it's green. And green means that the interpolation works. So this interpolation works. You can go subframes. You can go, just in case you didn't know, if you go very close and you go to your frame and type 0.1, for example, 9.2, 9.3, these are the subframes. This won't happen if the point count is changing, because the computer cannot calculate between two positions because the points are changing place. So keep that in mind when you're saving or using Alembics. Create a hierarchy or a setup where despite what you do, the topology is going to remain the same. That's why anyone that has been following me for the last few years, when I do anything that has to do with an animated sweep and Alembic files, usually what I do is I don't use sweeps. I animate the splines, and I use a spline wrap to wrap a cylinder, because a cylinder, being one object, always has the same point count. It just moves around. And then here, what I'm going to show you is the following situation. I'm going to set this up from scratch. I'm using, for straight lines, I just like to use this hack, not for any other reason. It's just that people don't know it, and it makes me seem smarter. So you get an end side and you add 2, and this doesn't create a looping spline that goes back and forth. It's just a single line, right? And you can sort of turn it on its head like that. And if you want to use this as a rope, you shouldn't use intermediate adaptive, because adaptive, it requires the spline to bend in order for the spline to generate the points. If I make this editable, it's just going to be 2 points and nothing in between. So you need to set a particular number of, let's say, lines. That's the terminology. This is a spline. It has the control points, and then it's made out of lines, which are the components that are generated by this. I'm going to set this to 32, and I'm going to make it a rope, simulation and rope. And of course, it's going to fall. So if we want to hold it in place, especially if it's a procedural spline, you cannot use the dressers, cloth and the dresser and select a point, and you cannot even go and use the rope belting. The rope belting requires a point. But what you can do is create a teeny weeny little sphere. And let's put it up here at around 200. Is that? I'm going to change the color because I can't see. Just make it green. There you go. And put it up here on the tip, just very close to the point. You can put it exactly, if you want, right in the center. It doesn't really make a difference. You can raise it up a bit. And I'm going to set the sphere to be a cloth object. It needs to be a dynamic object, not a collider. It has to be a simulated object. But because I don't want it to fall, this is what's going to happen. I want it to retain its position. You will go to the cloth and go to mix animation and just pin it. And what that's going to do is, although it's being calculated in the simulation, it doesn't move because it's retaining its original position. It's being pinned. There you go. Oh, it's funny. I made my line green, which is the y-axis, and it's not very visible that it's falling. Great selection of colors, Noseman. So I'm going to make it pink. And what we need to do now is connect the spline to the sphere using a connector tag. So simulation, connector tag, and the connector tag is going to sample all the objects of the scene. You need to create it, and you can see 1 point is touching. If I update live and move this, you can see I get more points touching my sphere with a maximum of 3. Right? These are the settings that are required, but 1 would do in this particular case. So now what we have is a spline that's hanging from that teeny weeny little sphere, and it's going to hang. And if you want to see what's going on, just add a turbulence. Make sure the turbulence for simulations is quite high. And let's add some nice little turbulence. And there you go. You have the spline. Now, had this spline been, let's say, adaptive, this is what will happen because it only has 2 points. There's no intermediate points. So that's why you need to do something like this. And this now, if you want to export it as an Alembic, you will just right-click and export it as an Alembic. If I go to my, not this scene, neither this scene, that's something else I'm going to show, this scene, where I've created a slightly more complex setup, and I'm going to show you how to do this. I have the same simulated spline, more of them actually, and I'm getting this rotation as well. And it's under a connect object, no weld, right click, and Baker's Alembic and delete. I'm actually going to do Baker's Alembic so you can see that the 2 animations are going to be identical. It's doing its own little thing now. And let's see if there are any questions. Yeah, capitalize the word question, please, so we can identify questions in the chat. There you go, Sandro Sanakoti. While trying to watch Pyro course, can't be played because of Vimeo privacy settings of some sort. Okay, we need to forward that to our.
Yeah, I already replied to that. Hey, Sandro.
Oh.
I think, well, some of the videos, for some of the videos, you have to be logged in. So maybe that's the reason. Try that out. If it then doesn't work, I mean, you know where to find me. Just write me.
Yeah. So green, that means we have a steady point count. Move the Alembic to the side, and you will see that they're identical. And that's it. So we're seeing the simulation playing. If I turn off the simulation, now I have real-time Alembic playing here. Oh, what happened? Am I still live? Oh, that's interesting. It's, yeah, I don't know what happened here. Yeah. Interesting. It's going extremely slow. Hello? Everyone's still there? Yeah? Yeah, something.
Yeah, you're still
We're
here.
here.
I don't know what happened. I turned these off and Cinema 4D froze. If you have something to show until I restart here. So
Yes,
yeah,
of course. Let me take over. We had a question here that was from Yuri. So, what is the best way to learn Cinema 4D, either from free courses or paid online courses? What are your go-to recommendations? So, what we recommend usually is what you can see here. It's Cineversity, cineversity.maxon.net, and here you find free tutorials, free getting started series for like everything we offer. I mentioned it earlier. Here's the getting started series for Cinema 4D, and here we have Redshift, Universe, ZBrush, and a lot of others. So this would be the first go-to page from my side. The other one would be the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel, where the stuff that we teach there is usually not everything is like beginner level. Some of it is more advanced, but that's definitely a good channel to yeah.
Can I add
to watch
a
after getting started? Yes, you can add a couple.
So on like paid options, I want to shout out like the amazing guys at School of Motion.
Oh yeah.
So they do really great they do like courses across the board, but they do some really great C4D ones, especially a beginner's course. And then Grayscale Gorilla have so much amazing training resources on their Plus subscription. So if you're looking to do like a paid option, those are two of the best for sure.
Yes, I can totally agree. All right, so
I can take it back.
You can take it back, yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
There I am.
Let me also. We had one comment that it might be easier to follow everything if we make the screen larger.
Ooh.
So let's do it like that.
Okay. If
just tell me when you do animation stuff that I'm gonna.
Around. Okay, so I'm going to show you again. All this is tangential to what we're showing. I'm going to show a blending technique in a bit and all that. So let's begin by saying that. Let's assume that I have let me just open my my start. This is just an empty document. I'm going to do the setup again to show you how you can do multiple splines with simulations using MoGraph Cloner. So one line, two, let's go and make a cloner. And let's go and clone my little spheres, right? So I'm just going to clone the spheres on the cloner. And I'm going to go and let's change the size. I'm going to make this a cylinder. I'm going to, let's say, make it 15 and 15 and increase the number of these little clones, right? And it's creating some sort of cylindrical grid. Excellent. Now I'm going to use this. I'm just going to pull this up, and I'm going to do what I said you need to do the connections. I'm going to go here and add a cloth. I'm going to go to mix animation and just pin it so they won't fall. So everything works fine. And just make them fewer, so just go a bit faster. What I want to do now is use the parameters of this cloner to create the lines. Now, let's say the method that most people use is they go here, they copy all these parameters, and they clone the spline. There's a better way. You select your cloner, and you go to clone on object mode, just like you would do with any polygon object. And in this, the object link, you drag the cloner on which you need to clone. Now, you will see that each clone, each spline line is going to be cloned on the center of each and every one of the surface of these spheres, because that's the default distribution. But if you set this to axes, then it uses the axes of each clone. And all you have to do in this case is rotate these 90 degrees in one direction. And let's put them down, I think 200, or up 200, minus 200. And there you go. Anything you change on this cloner now is going to propagate automatically to the splines as well. So there's this way that people are not aware of, that you can use one cloner to drive more without using Express or anything like that. So let's take this and make it uniform. Let's make this 16. And now let's just go to the cloner. Whenever you are doing a simulation with clones, put the simulation tag on the cloner, and it considers it a single object. And of course, just go and add that nice little connector, and create, update live, move this around until you see those yellow little lines, which are the connectors. And now here's our simulation. And now whatever animation you do on the cloner itself, you may want it to rotate 360 degrees, and the simulation is going to follow through. So this is how you would do something like this. And let's go and bake it now. So let's put this under a connect object, and let's go here and say connect objects, Baker's Alembic, and delete. It's going to do its little thing. It's going to take 3 seconds, and you should get a green Alembic. You don't need anything else if you don't want it. Oh, I baked the wrong cloner. I baked the spheres. This is something I cannot teach you to do things properly. So, yep, we're there now. Now let's do a Baker's Alembic and delete. Boop, 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 boop. And you can get rid of this, and you have a green little Alembic, and everything works as expected. So now this is something you can insert it in any scene. You can use it as a spline. You can do sweeps. You can do all that nice stuff you want to do. Now I want to touch upon another subject, because there was a question about blending. And I thought maybe it's a good idea to see how you can blend shapes of a spline while retaining, to some extent, the simulated aspect of it for a rope. And the idea here is to get a circle and turn it into a star. So this is going to be the blending. And here's why this is not going to work the way I'm setting it up. So 1, let's say 5 and 1. And you would assume that if you set this to blend, these are going to blend. They're not. Because when you have procedural objects, the blending happens with the parameters. If these two objects were objects with the same number of points and editable, then that thing would happen. The transition would happen from a star to a circle. But in this case, these are two totally different objects with different parameters, and the blending is not going to happen. You can blend between 2 stars or 3 stars, or 2 circles or 3 circles, and so forth. But between a star and a circle, or a sphere and a cube, that will not work. So here's an idea. Here's how you need to start thinking about things when you want to do all sorts of weird transitions. One thing I could do is replace the circle with another star. So I'm going to take the same star, put it underneath here. But the second star, I'm going to make the inner radius the same as the outer radius. Now, because we have 2 objects which have the same point number, the cloner can blend from one to the other, because the only thing it's going to blend is this parameter from 100 to 200. And if these were editable objects, on the other hand, you can do, providing they have the same number of points, then their point positions are going to blend. So I'm going to leave this in this status now, and I'm going to create just one clone. And basically, the way you will blend from one to the other is by controlling this using an effector. And let's select the cloner. Let's go and create a plane effector. The parameter that controls the blending is definitely not the position, but it's the modify clone. And the modify clone is a number that chooses from the first clone, if you have many different clones, from the first to the last with 100%. If you have only two, it's going to go in between these two states. Lovely. So the other thing I'm going to do with these two is make sure that they have uniform, and let's put 16, and this is going to create 16 per segment, because if they become ropes, we're going to have a bit more detail. Let's lay down something on the floor to catch them, a collider. So right click, simulation, collider. Let's turn it off. I just want it to catch them. And let's go here and add a rope tag. And let's raise this up. Sometimes I like to use the transform to raise it, so I don't move my clone from the middle, but you can always move that. That's not a problem. And I'm going to press play, and you will see that the star is going to fall on the ground. Now, I want to change from frame, let's say 10. I want to take the effect of the effector. It's not working now because the simulation, after frame 1, the simulation takes over. Yeah, the simulation is on, so that's not going to work. So let me just go 1 sec and disable the simulation. And we should have, why isn't my clone affecting it? Did I change the parameter? No, I didn't change the modify clone. Duh. I told you to do it, and I was seeing who's paying attention. That's my go-to thing. I always tell people, oh, you're not paying attention. When in fact,
That's your strategy, isn't it?
Yeah. So here you go. So we're blending. We're telling the effector to apply 0 strength or 100% strength, and the strength is the parameter of modifying the clone. So it's going to go through the hierarchy if there are more objects and just blend from one to the other. Let's go and animate this, the strength. You can do it with fields as well. The strength controls the overall effect of the effector. If you put it in fields, it just masks it to those shapes. So let's go to frame 20, do this, and let's go to frame 40 and do this, and then frame 60 and do that again. Okay. And now press play, and oh, it's not doing anything. That's moving. And the reason is at frame 1, the simulation takes over. So the points are going to go where the simulation tells them to. How do we affect points? Well, you go to the mix animation. The with pins is sort of an absolute way for the points to move to a position, but with force, it's going to apply, let's call it a mini wind force on each point. And depending on the strength, it's going to blow it ever so slightly to go in the direction it needs to go. So you can see that it's trying to retain its position. So you can go and put a 0.1 here. So look at that. Maybe 0.2. Animate. There you go. So you can create transitions plus having some sort of influence on what you're doing. And of course, you can go and add a nice little turbulent force. Again, around 150, that's my starting number. And yeah, add a bit of turbulence. And now you get both the transition and the noise and all that. So with various permutations of this setup will allow you to do quite interesting setups, interesting things. And I think, will the follow shape help? Let's see. Yep, the follow shape helps. I've referred to the follow shape in the first series of simulations I did when I was shooting some moving squiggly worms in a bowl. So check that out. I'm not going to tell you what it does. So this is how you combine simulations and some sort of, well, I mean, I can go to the star, for example, and make both of these 50, just to make the circle smaller. And then you can see it's growing and getting smaller again, and growing and getting smaller again. And I can change the keyframes to give it a bit more time to do its thing. And, you know, if you add more, a higher strength here, you can see that you can create splines that appear to be growing and so forth. Anyway, there's you can take this and do anything you wish with it. And yeah, if you want to show something, Jonas, because I have the second thing, I can show it a bit later. So you can
let's reply to some of the questions we have on the stream at the moment. So let me quickly share my screen. And I think in my case, it's better to do that. And so the question was, is there a way to control the scale of clones in a matrix by vertex map? Clones are distributed on the surface of the object with a vertex map. So yeah, so in the case that I prepared, it's not a matrix, but it's actual clones, but the principle is the same. So the landscape for now doesn't have a vertex map, but we can add one by right-clicking and then other tags, vertex map. And now we have a vertex map on it, and we can just select it and add a field here. So let's say we want to add, yeah, let's go with a spherical field, and maybe let's make it a little bit bigger, like so. And the only thing you would do here is add a plane effector, and you wanted to affect scale. So let's go to the parameter tab, and let's deactivate position, activate scale, and set this to uniform scale and set it to -1. And then under fields, you can simply drag and drop in the vertex map itself. And by default, this will do like an inverted effect because here we are going with a scale of -1. So we are scaling the clones down. But you can also just go in here to remapping. And maybe let's see if we can just invert this. No, that doesn't work. But what we can do is add an invert here. And now we have it. Now we can just move this around like so. Wait, it didn't update. That's interesting. Okay, this did update. Oh, that's an interesting one. Let me see. Let me see. So here we've got this spherical field.
Are you using the plane effector to apply the effect to the cloner?
Yes, I'm using it. Yes, exactly. That's what I do. And now it updated. Okay, that's interesting. So let me go here, press A to update. All right, so okay, when this happens, let me first try here in the plane effector. Can we set up something here? No. All right. In the vertex map, maybe I should deactivate this. Maybe that helps. And if not, there is always the option to force an update. And this can usually be done by just animating one of the parameters, just in case that happens. But which one shall we animate? Let's go to vertex map here, and let's just animate the max. Let's just go to 99.9. And that should force the update, hopefully. Yeah. All right, so this is forcing an update. Whenever that happens, this could be the way around it, but that's definitely something I'm going to talk to people here. All right, so let me see, what else do we have?
I just pinged a question that's sort of related to what you're showing, Jonas.
Yeah.
Nicola.
All right, let's bring this up. In older versions of Cinema 4D, using poly selections and vertex map to mask clones resulted in all surface clones being calculated. Is this now possible to only generate clones inside the selections and maps?
No.
No.
Next question. It's part of the architecture of how MoGraph works, where all the clones are generated and the ones that are not necessary are not. MoGraph is one of the most amazing tools because it's built on very simple fundamental principles that Cinema 4D already supports. And that is, for example, the MoGraph color is the display color you control from the basic tag in the object manager for any object. That's the MoGraph color. The matrix is the matrix position, scale, rotation. So there's the MoGraph works by sitting on Cinema 4D's functionality. And because I think all DCCs, there's a difficulty in generating objects when the scene executes. That is an obscure thing that people won't notice until they're told and explained. The way MoGraph works, it just makes the other clones invisible. For better or worse, that's how it works. So the answer is simply no.
Yeah. So there was another question. Now I lost it, but that's a very interesting one. Paculia was asking how to constrain an object like a button on a simulated cloth so that as the cloth simulates and deforms, the button follows. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for that question, because I think it's a very good one. So I have to improvise on this a little bit. So my suggestion would be, first of all, let's get a button. Boom. So here we go. Let's use this one, and let's just clone it onto this surface for now. Okay, let's scale it up a little bit and then clone it onto the surface. So first of all, we of course need this to be simulated. So let's right click and simulation tags. Let me undock this. So I'm gonna add a cloth tag here, and these two shall have a collider tag. And now I have the cloth simulation going on. Now, the next thing I do is I select the cloner and set this to object mode, and I use the plane as the object. Usually a good practice is to just place the cloner. Who's getting a Skype call?
That was me. I need to close this.
All right, so you can clone onto this. And of course, because it's MoGraph, it would be good to make it so that the Z or Z axis is pointing upwards. So the way you can do that is selecting, in this case, the subdivision surface, then go to axis mode, rotate, and just rotate this by 90 degrees. And here we can also define where or with which offset those buttons shall be placed, like so. All right, now let's undo this, or let's not undo this, but leave axis mode. And now if I simulate this, you can see that they are already following, but they also have a frame delay. You can see that here, right? And an easy way to solve this is by going to the simulation settings, and you could Control D and then go to simulation, and there is one checkbox here under scene that is called simulate before generators. And once you do that, you can see that they are sticking. Now, what if you really want these buttons to be at specific points here? So there are various ways you could do that. If it's just one button, I would maybe still use the cloner to position it and just bring it down to a count of 1. And then maybe, well, there might be an easier way to do that. But what we can do is, using MoGraph, we could pick a point and move it to this point. Maybe that works better if we instead adjust the distribution to, let's say, polygon center. So now we have a button on each polygon, and let me set this to multi-instance so that we got faster viewport playback and also scale the buttons down a little bit. So now we could, for example, use MoGraph selections. So simply select the cloner, then go to MoGraph selection, and just say, okay, we want these to be shown. And maybe just every third one here, just as an example, like so. And yeah, now we have the selection. And there is one cool command that actually many people don't know, but it is in here in the MoGraph menu, and it's called hide selected. Maybe we should invert the selection here. Can we simply invert it? Let me try.
Yeah, there's invert there. They're right there under the clear tag properties. Invert.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
All right. And now we just go to hide selected. So now those are hidden, and there we go. This is how I would do it, I think. I hope that answers the question.
Nice.
Another one, I don't know if that would work, but if you just have one button, do you think it would work to just create one of these and then use the formula effector to place it on the polygon? I mean, we can try that.
That is what I was trying here. I couldn't get the point selection to update, but I didn't try with the polygon selection. Keep talking, and if I do it,
I just keep talking. Okay, so yeah, let me try this here as well. So I'm going to set this back to yeah, object. Yeah, that's set up, and let's just create one clone on. I'm totally doing this wrong here. Here we go. We just want the surface and just one of the buttons. And we don't need the hide selection anymore. All right, but where is my clone? So we're cloning here. Set this to instance. No.
Jonas, we just had a special suggestion from Chan Erdeman.
Oh, Chan is here.
He is. He's saying he uses the clamp constraint to attach buttons to a deformed character.
The what?
The clamp
constraint. Oh, now you're throwing me under the bus, Chan. However, let's try this. Let me just place this one here, and let's just create rigging and a constraint tag. And here we can use a clamp, and in the clamp, so basically the constraint tag is a fantastic tag. So whenever you want to do stuff that usually doesn't work in the hierarchy here, like for example, if you have an object and you want this object to be passed from one character to another one, you could use the constraint tag in parent mode, and this way you could well, the light is going off here. That's interesting. Yeah, and then you could just use the constraint, and this way you don't have to create multiple copies of that object in different places of the hierarchy. You could just like add that constraint and then pass it on to other objects to be the parents of that object. All right, and you can also clamp objects to other objects. So in this case, you go to basic in the constraint tag and set it to clamp. And then we want to clamp this onto the surface. And let me see. We want the fixed position. Use normals, align. All right, that could work. I hope it works, because otherwise, well, we should bring Chan onto the stream, shall we? Oh, it works. In this case, let me deactivate simulate before generators. Maybe that makes a difference. So it's one frame behind. All right, so it is working. It's not aligning. So let me see. Align.
I think we need to use as normal.
Yes, that makes sense. But in this case, we need the Z or Z, and whew. Solved.
Oh.
Great. So, yeah, that's actually a great suggestion, John. Constraint tags are usually something you use in the character workflow a lot. And John Eruman is a fantastic character rigger and animator, so he is an expert in these areas. But the thing is that you can use these constraints in many other areas as well. So I definitely encourage you to use them. And that's basically the last thing that I want to say about that. Did you prepare another scene, Noseman? Shall I?
Yep, I do have something for Willem. Have I seen him in the chat? He asked a question. Let me.
Are you ready to take the screen?
Yes, you can share my screen.
There we go.
It should be the screen with a little circle. So let me just find as a trainer. There we go, March, and let's go to the original file here. And let's open the, well, I call it fixed, but so the idea is that there's this simulated object that falls with gravity. And as far as I understand the brief, that Willem wanted to start inflating it from the bottom so that it builds up. Now, there's one little unfortunate thing, and that is that currently the balloon doesn't work with Vertex Map, so we cannot control it. It's either on or off, and you can animate these. Now, I did a few things, a few modifications. I don't know if they align to the brief, but the number one thing is I know it was thin. I made it thicker. And what's happening here is that this is going to slowly collapse. Slowly collapse, slowly collapse. And then I'm animating the mix animation using a vertex map, using this linear field. So all the points are going to try and slowly go to their original positions when this starts going up. And therefore, while colliding with everything else, and therefore it's going to start, let's say, inflating from the bottom to go up. It's not inflating, it's just assuming the final position just by these mini forces that are blowing upwards. And you can, sculpt your object to a certain degree and do something like this. And again, the setup is fairly simple. Make sure that you have Use Deformed Points off so that the field calculates the points in their original position, not the position they're going to assume after the simulation. This is one of the most important things. It's on by default. Most of the times you have to turn it off. So the field basically is traveling through an object that the field sees as this, although the simulation has made the points move, but the original positions are always recorded at the beginning of the simulation. So turn this off, and as these are growing, the high value, the 1, is informing the mix animation to apply the force to anything that has the high value. And depending on how strong you make this, I think I'm going to break it, but who cares? That's why we're here. We're here to break stuff. And I'm going to tell you a couple of other things about topology. It's good to avoid the triangles and all that, not for any technical reasons. It's just my OCD kicks in when I see weird triangles and all that. Other than a Delaunay triangulation, all other triangles just trigger me really bad. So avoid them. And now there's more strength going in. It's a strength of 100 pushing this up. And of course, don't forget that you can make this a bit more organic by adding all sorts of noises and stuff like that. But nonetheless, I made this thicker. You can make it thin again and then expand it as an animation so that the points will assume those positions after the field starts passing through them. But you have to circumvent the balloon, which is now a fixed parameter. And the way it works is that if you have something that is thin like this, the thinner the object, the less of the pressure is going to be applied to this. So that's why this particular thing is not going to work exactly like this. You can get very close to this, but you have to add a bit of point level animation and make sure that the topology exists, that you do have those intermediate edges, because this doesn't have many edges on the side. If I remove this, you'll see it only has 2. You can go and add more so that when it expands, there's enough topology for this, and work around it in that way. You can always DM me on Twitter if you can't figure this out, and we'll find a way. Oh, Darren. Hi, Darren. Is that what I went ballooning with cloth? So
Yeah, I also have a
oh yeah, go ahead and
an answer here. Because I really like that question here from Demisard1. How can we animate objects in a limited frame rate to emulate a stop motion clay motion effect while retaining the camera animation to 29 frames per second or whatever frame rate? And that's an excellent question. So let me quickly set up a camera move here. So I'm going to set a keyframe here. I'm going to set a keyframe there. And then I'm also going to rotate this null from there to here.
You're showing my screen.
Oh, yes, that's true. So here we go. Let's do it like that. All right, I have this animation. And this animation shows an object that is just deformed using a bend and a camera movement. So with stop motion, what you actually want to have is a smooth camera motion that is the frame rate that your project is in. And then you just want the stop motion parts, like the animated parts, except for the camera, to have the stop motion effect. And here's how you can do that. So there is a tag that is called track modifier tag. You just have to right click, go to animation tags, and here you can find the track modifier. And once you do that, or once you apply that, there is a mode called posterization. And here you can adjust the frame step. So I'm not sure how fluent the live stream is, so I'm going to set this to 5 frames. And in this case, because we have added it to the cylinder, but the actual animation is happening on the bend, we have to activate hierarchy. So here we go. You can see that it already changed. And now if I play this back, I don't know if you can see it well, but you can see that I hope you can see that the cylinder is bending in a stop motion fashion and the camera motion is still fluent. So let me adjust the frame step to 10, then it's even more visible. Right? So what this tag is doing is it's actually having a look at the track here, and it's using or it's modifying this curve that you have to set up beforehand in the way you set up here. And what you can do is you can also add procedural spring animation. This is also quite cool. So if you don't want to let's say, animate springiness, let's just move this object here. And within a few frames, we're going to animate it from Y0 to Y200 or so. Now it's up here. Set a keyframe. And now if I play this back, you can see, oh, that might have been a little bit too far. Let's go with 100 instead, so that we can actually see it. So yeah, now it's just moving up. But if I add a track modifier tag here, I can leave it at spring and then just move bring the spring effect up to, let's say, 100%. And now you can see that there is some springiness here. Let me jump out of the camera so that we can really see it. This is a really great one. Just keep in mind that before you render, you should cache this. That's important because, yeah, it needs the previous frame to calculate the next frame. And whenever you have that, especially in simulation and stuff, you need to bake your stuff to really be sure that it will work in the rendering then. For example, when you have a electricity dropout or something, and your machine shuts down, and you're rendering like an image sequence, then you can just continue from where it stopped. But that only works when you baked your simulation. So let's just hit range here and bake this, and then the status is cached. And now we can also scrub the timeline, and you can see that the did that work? Well, let me bake this again. So that should work, actually. Yeah, now it worked. Okay. So now we can just scrub, and it's all stable. And the same will happen when you send it to another machine to render, or if you distribute your rendering like in your studio or at home, this would be the way, or this would be the thing you would have to do before you render it. Just make sure that your stuff, your simulations, everything that needs caching, everything that needs the previous frame to calculate the next one is cached. All right, you had another one, Noseman.
Yeah, let me answer a few questions. So Mike says, I love using the delay effector and delay field with MoGraph performance, but it doesn't seem to work with motion blur. It does. I just did it. So unless there's a particular setup that it doesn't work, if you want to, and this is for everyone, if there's a particular scene which you present some sort of problem, there is a very specific step of things you need to do. Sorry, there's a series of steps you need to take. Number one, remove everything that doesn't participate in the creation of the problem. So, for example, materials. If you're using a third-party renderer, get rid of all that, because if, let's say, an XYZ renderer, which is not part of the Maxon family, is causing the problem, we won't solve the problem, right? So, but you have to do that amount of work. Remove everything that doesn't participate in exhibiting the problem. Number two, see without these things if the problem persists, and try and do the same thing in a more simplified situation. For example, if your object has 1,000,000 points and you have a certain problem, but the same problem does not happen with a similar object that has 1,000 points, then it's something to do not with the setup, but with the amount of data. So it's a different conversation. And usually, now this happens more than half of the time, that users that have a specific problem, in the process of simplifying a scene, they find a solution. That is not hyperbole when I say it. the moment they start working on simplifying the scene so that they can send a scene, or the minute they start writing down what the exact problem is. Because if someone says, yeah, it doesn't do what I want, first of all, we don't know what you want, and we don't know what it doesn't do. You have to be very specific with the questions. But as far as deformer using a delay, if you share my screen, I have it in front of me right now.
Shared.
I have a plane with plane effector and a random effector, and it's got a delay on it. So without the delay, the animation is here on the right. I put the delay with the spring, and I've also exported an Alembic to make sure that everything's okay. Your Alembic needs to be green if you want motion blur to work. I've got redshift. I've turned on motion blur, both of these. And if you render this, you will see that there's absolutely no problem with motion blur. You can see the motion blur here, and you can see the motion blur over there. So it's not very violent, but it's over there. So there must be something else. So if you're preparing a scene to send it, just make sure to only send the appropriate things. Now, having said that, and because we're 1 minute past our allocated time, there's an interesting conversation. I'm just going to go tangentially here. You can just show my beautiful face, and then you can take the screen. About AI systems and all that. And today I did a little experiment on Twitter, no experiment on ChatGPT. I asked it to explain how to sort objects using MoGraph. And of course, it gave me a rubbish answer that makes no sense. It sounds that it makes sense. So it's like a poem. You can write a poem that sounds nice, but it can only be absorbed in an emotional level. A poem is not a manual.
Why didn't you ask it to create a poem out of the creation of a MoGraph setup?
Good question, because I wanted a solution. I didn't want to feel nice. Okay, and that's a big difference. AI is aimed, it's a statistical machine learning system where it strings words together that have a high statistical probability to be found together in the language model. And it does it in certain ways where what it says sounds to make sense, and it makes more sense than it used to some time ago. Here's the problem, and that's why I feel our job here is very safe. It's because humans understand nuance and context. When someone asks the question I was just asked, that it doesn't work with delay, the question is wrong, because and when I say it's wrong, it omits enough information that makes it totally obscure. I can find 1,000 different permutations of the delay working as I'm demonstrating in this scene here. But the fact that I know that because I've done the same mistake is what puts any human that's helping another human in that very, very unique position of strength. Because we learn through mistakes. You touch the iron. Here's a story about me, how I learned that heat resonates with objects. My mum was ironing when we were in England when I was a kid. She unplugged the iron, and up to that point, I was 6 years old. I thought that the minute you unplug it, the heat goes away. And what did I do? I grabbed the iron from the bottom. Quite and that was a big lesson. Humans learn mostly by avoiding things. That's what happens. The AI models do not do that. The AI models are the epitome of positive reinforcement in the sense that this is correct, this is wrong, this is correct, this is wrong. And you cannot create a situation where you can troubleshoot nuanced things, complex things, without taking into account the weakest link. And the weakest link is communication. These systems cannot communicate. They can just string words together. Until the scientists and the programmers and the developers, which are very, very smart, but they have very little life experience. Most of them are young, and that's one of the big problems. Once they get to the point where they pass this into the code, then things are going to be different. But for now, anyone that does something like supporting humans, I actually feel empowered by this, because I can beat ChatGPT in any. And by the way, ChatGPT this morning with this test failed the certification test. So just to let you know, whereas humans are going to pass it. just to let you know. I failed it. And Jonas and I and the training team are the people that can tell you with authority. So no one can claim in the world that no, ChatGPT will pass the test. Well, it failed. It can take a retest whenever it wants. But remember, it's about mistakes. It's about nuance. It's about understanding when someone says something, what they actually mean. Now, there's a medium ground there. This little spiel I'm giving here is because all you users need to ask questions so that you receive the best answer in the smallest amount of time. Because I'd love to speak with every single one of you for hours, meet you, who you are, how you think, what your lives are. I'm very interested in learning about all these things and discuss any technical topic for hours, or philosophy or anything like that. When you're looking for answers, the more concise, precise, reproducible, and simple the question is, the higher the chances are that you're going to receive an answer that's going to help you move forward. Everyone works at deadlines. No one likes to sit around, except for me, sit around doing nothing and procrastinating. So you just slowly and iteratively start refining the way you ask your questions, and start refining your methods of troubleshooting and simplifying scenes, because that's going to make you much more efficient and capable of solving these problems yourselves. So a bit of philosophy, AI, and how to ask questions. And again,
I have another one to add here.
yeah, please.
So I read in the newspaper here that in Germany they asked ChatGPT to take the A-level exams, and interestingly enough, it failed at a question about AI. However, just think about it, and now you can show your stuff. Show how you can motion blur. What was it? Jiggle.
Oh, well, the solution would be fairly simple. It just works. Or the solution to everything, if you want motion blur to work, is constant point count and baking things. That's it. Caching to Alembic, or baking, or caching to a Mo cache, or using the cache effector from University. I think we updated it, or we're going to update it soon, so it works with 2023 series. But it's important to know that when you have cached data and it's just things moving or rotating, then motion blur is very easy to calculate. But the number one way to get consistent proper motion blur is to have a consistent topology. If topology changes, and a little bit of a detail, the way that motion blur is calculated is that between two frames, so let's assume we're talking about frame 0 and frame 1, okay? Each point that has a very specific index, each point has a name. His name is 0, 1, 2, 3, that's it. Let's take point 0. Point 0 has a position in this frame and a different position in that frame. This is what defines the animation. And all the motion blur algorithm does is it fires various samples in between those two positions. That's what it does. It goes and it says from this position to this position and everything in between. And you're going to show you the increments here, here. That's 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, one frame. Each and every one of those subframe positions, it gets a render. There's a frame that renders at a lower, let's say, and again, I'm oversimplifying. Imagine if you're rendering 10 frames with less samples, and then you just stack those. There are a couple of things that happen on top of that, but that's a basic concept. If your model is not capable of producing these intermediate steps, then you won't be able to get motion blur. That's it. We don't have a vector-based motion blur where you have a parameter where you say that's the vector and use it. You can for volumes, because volumes have they don't have topology. It's a different way it works. That's why you will find that if you go to the RS volume, you have the velocity grid, because then the motion blur is based on the direction at that point in space, not the velocity of a point that's moving from A to B. So constant topology, the ability to create subframes are two of the most important things to get your immersion blur. There was one more thing, but I can't remember it right now. But those are the things you need to be concerned about, regardless of what you're putting together. So what else? Did I say node means clone? Did I say nodes and clones? Did I confuse my words there?
No, I was replying to another question that
Oh,
was about
yeah.
transform spaces in the MoGraph cloner.
Yes, a node is a clone. Yeah. Let's see if there are any other questions. What node effector object options do effectors parameters? Oh yeah, that was a question you were answering. Good.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I can answer a few other questions here just quickly.
Since you have my screen on, let me say one more thing.
Yes.
When you have changing topology and you get some really weird looking motion blur where things seem to be flying in different directions, that's because if the topology of my object is changing and what is considered, let's say, point, so this will be more visible if I create a polygon here, right, with one-on-one segments, okay? So here the point indices is, let's say, 0, 1, 2, 3. But if I change this over here, now you have 0, 1, 2, 3. So when you transition, if you animate this and you try to motion blur it, 0.3, 0, 1, 2, 3, which is here on one frame, and here in the other, is going to create a streak, because the Cinema 4D and Redshift think that it's this point that moved there. There is no understanding from Cinema 4D that no, this point just changed address. It's some, it has a different name, but it's the same point. That does not happen. That's why when your point number, your topology, as we say, changes for whatever reason, you get those very, very broken motion blur. You can sell it as an art piece. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but I'm saying you won't get the results you expect. And yeah, that's what I have to say at this point.
All right. So let me take back the screen here. And so yeah, I quickly wanna answer this question. What node effector object options do in every effector transform space? Yeah, what they mean, and what does the transform mode do with relative, absolute, and remap? So I have a, let's say, 80% complete answer to that. So let's first have a look at the transform spaces. So what you see here is a bunch of clones, a bunch of cubes cloned onto a sphere. And transform space node is the default. So node means clone, more or less. So it's every single clone has its own transform space. And this way, when I, in this case, so Z is always in normal direction. When I play with the Z value here in this plane effector, you can see that all of these clones are moving outwards. That's node space. Then we have effector space. And as you can see here, all of these clones are now moving into the same direction. So they are not adjusting their relative position to each other, but they are all moving in Z direction, right? That's what's happening here. And if I now, because it's using the effector, matrix, you can, let's say, rotate this and therefore control the direction where this is going, right? So this is what you can do with effector. Let me quickly see. I'm not sure if I ever used object, but object does the same, but it's using the object. I just want to see which object. It's using the cloner object. All right. So then the next one that I want to show is is absolute space. So I don't know exactly what remap does, but relative is well. Let me create another scenario here. So we set the cloner to linear, and we clone, let's say, in X direction, like so. Let's use a few more clones, and I'm going to delete the plane effector. I'm going to delete the sphere, and now I'm going to create a very well, a very yeah, it's an advanced setup. Let's put it like that. And not many people know that you can do that. I'm going to use the formula effector and just use one of my favorite formulas in there. And that formula is not the default sinus thing here. That is very intimidating. And usually people, when they see that, don't know what to do and never open or create a formula effector ever again. But you have some variables here, and one of these is ID. It's going to use the object index. And if we go to cloner and go to transform and display the index, you can see that every single clone, same as every single point on the geometry, has its unique name. And that unique name is a number, and it's starting from 0 and then going up. All right, so let's say we want to pick out just one clone here. Let's say the clone with the ID 5. Then we can just type in ID equals 5. And this will be the 6th clone here. So we have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So this one is now moving to the side, and it's also being scaled up. Now we can move it up. All right, but what if we want this clone here? What if we want to control this clone here? This is something where we would need absolute. So in this case, I'm going to set this to absolute. And I'm going to set the position to 0, 0, 0. And I'm also going to set it to the effector. So now you can see that the clone has been moved to the position of that effector. And by moving around the effector, I suddenly have a transform gizmo for this whole thing. Right now, I can only use it with position. Scale doesn't work here. And rotation also works, but you can see that it doesn't work initially. So what you need to have to do in order to make rotation work as well is to change one of these parameters. Usually I just go with 360 for the heading. And now you can see that this works. And I can move this clone around now. I can rotate it and stuff like that. And here in the formula, I can even define whether I want another clone. So let's go to Effector again, and let's say, okay, the clone with the ID 5 is not the correct one. Let's use the one with the ID 8. And then we're using this one. So this is something where you would need the absolute space. Yeah, for remap, I would have to read the documentation as well. All right, let's just bring up a few other questions before.
I have a couple of answers.
Yes.
There was a question about soft bodies and Unreal Engine, Alembic. I think since last year, Unreal Engine has an Alembic import. If you go to Datasmith, I was trying it, and it works pretty good. Try that. So for soft bodies, I don't know what kind of limitation it has. Then there's something from Box of Chocolates. Interesting spelling. I love that. So Box of Chocolates, what is the biggest, and this is going to touch on the previous subject, right? What is the biggest jump in quality of 3D work? Is it the accumulation of technical understanding like math or coding, or a more artistic principles? So the second part, the qualifier, technical understanding or artistic principles. The question is vague, though, because what do you mean quality with 3D? That's, if you're looking for photorealism, then it's 100% technical. Your render works well, you know how to assign materials properly, understand PBR workflows, you're done. Whether it's going to be nice or not, or, you know, I can't make nice things. I know that. I can make things look the way I want 100%, but the way I want them to look is not good. That's the problem. So it goes to the second. So you have to qualify. What do you mean of quality of 3D work? If you're a technical illustrator and you want to make things that are precise, then that's different. If you want to make things that affects people's emotions, that's totally different. If you want to make things that look real, that's totally different. So this would be a question that an AI will fail every single time, but at least humans understand that there are many elements to this, and depending on the rest of the context or the rest of the conversation, we may be able to reach a certain understanding. But this is a good example of framing the question depending on what exactly you mean. Are you talking about who is considered a more competent user? In the term, there are many well-known artists and users which are very low in their technical abilities, but produce absolutely amazing stuff. And
I think it's more about the creating artistic stuff. That's how I read the question. And what was the biggest jump when it comes to artistic?
it says quality of 3D work, right? It
Yeah,
depends. So
most of the time, that's my experience. People ask that because they actually mean artistic quality, and I can definitely say that one was GPU rendering, so that suddenly everyone had was able to create photorealistic imagery and lighting and everything. It's just a way more straightforward process and faster and so on. The other thing is proceduralism. Like when I think of Cinema 4D, the quality of the work of the artists in our community definitely got much better with release 20, which was fields and volumes, or volume modeling. And also I saw it in the last year with simulation and Pyro.
Let me try and disprove what you just said. Redshift is the least procedural software and creates much more artistic work. So that's exactly
yeah.
If you frame it as to Cinema 4D users, that because of the limitations of what our product can do, right? You cannot build a car using paper. You have to build the car using metal and all that. The tool set, as fantastic as it is, it confines you in a certain look. If you take that, those parameters, and you say, from the motion design aspect of Cinema 4D's capabilities, which technology was, or what was the best thing that ever happened in 3D, then that's a different question. That's exactly, you proved my point. Because procedurality for the Cinema 4D workflow is absolutely amazing. But for the artistic workflow, it's pretty much the opposite, right? Because there's a balance to be held. And we are lucky to have a range of software that covers all the brains, the left thinking brains, the right brains, the middle brains, the brains that use every single cell, because we can go from the absolute hands-on. ZBrush is like using some sort of clay from outer space with your hands. So in ZBrush, you have 4 hands instead of 1, and you're working on this magical clay.
I actually love that phrase. ZBrush, clay of outer space.
Yeah, but that's what it is, because you can pretty much do the same thing using traditional media, but it's as if you have an extra dimension to work with, or 2, and more hands, and and all that. But it's still, if you cannot make something out of Play-Doh, you will never be able to make something nice in ZBrush. That's why I haven't touched ZBrush yet, because I cannot express. I understand a lot of the tools, I know that, but there's absolutely nothing I can do that won't make me look worse than I already look now. But anyhow, but to the previous question, so it is a complex topic about what in 3D has increased the quality of work. Well,
I think we should take that offline.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, we can do another live stream, like philosophy of 3D, and then talk about this stuff. like for days.
If anyone is interested, so that'll be nice to get feedback. If anyone is interested to discuss other industry things, things that may not require so much screen time, but more face time, and ask questions about work, about social impact, about goods and bads of our industry and all that, I'd love if we can do that, because we have accumulated centuries of knowledge, not only for the in the training team. We have centuries of life experience, centuries of technical experience accumulated within us, and we talk to people like the users that watch our shows. So, in my view, that will be a great discussion. And if you have anyone to suggest that will be a good panelist as well. I like people with strong opinions. I prefer people I disagree with. Otherwise, it gets boring. So, yeah, please tell us if that will be interest you. Tag me on Twitter and all that, because I would love for us to sit for 2 or 3 hours or a marathon and exchange opinions and disagree on everything and hopefully learn something at the end. You never learn anything if you don't disagree. Remember that. If you don't disagree, you'll never know anything, because if you agree, that means that, yeah, okay, I sort of knew that or can figure that out.
Yeah.
Knowledge is the things that you couldn't figure out by yourself. It's the things which, I didn't think about that. Great. That's an extra piece of knowledge. So always try to disagree with people, even if you do what I do, where I just change my position just to disagree with people.
Yeah, it's all a debate, right? So, yeah, I just want to quickly get into a few other questions. Nicola asked, is it possible to get the original icons back? That's an interesting question, because what you see here on my screen are the original icons. I wouldn't recommend you. Now they are the original icons. The original icons would be the icons from 30 years ago. However, in any case, I wouldn't recommend you to switch them back, although I know that it's possible. But I wouldn't recommend it, because we are going forward with these icons, and it just doesn't make sense when it comes to future tutorials and stuff like that. Then
Can I just tell Daniel, hit me on, are you Daniel Schmidt? If you're on Twitter, please DM me with the file, simplify it, and send it to me so I can take a look.
Yeah. We had another question. Is it possible to generate sand granular effect with just using cloner or thinking particles without buying X particles? So I think that question had been answered in the chat. I think Sandro replied to it, and I agree with him there. So
Steve, there's one more. Steve, is it possible to create a capsule that would become a procedural create outline operation? In what context create outline? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Like a spline outline, or just procedurally from any polygon selection? That's
why it's not possible to open an old C4D file. If you have R19, you can load pre-R19 files into R19 and then save it locally with a new name, and then the newer versions will read R19.
Yeah,
if you have problems with that, talk to Maxon, and I think maybe support can help with that. Just but before R19, there was a switch to optimize and make the file structure more robust with new stuff. So anything before R19 cannot be opened with after R19, which is R20 and so forth. And there's even there's that plugin. There was even a plugin that allowed you to do some to find old files and change them. But anyhow, yeah, please, I would say contact Maxon tech support so they can give you a hand.
Then there is another one from Uriah Hill. Is it possible to bake a Pyro sim to start from a full flame instead of starting gradually over time of many frames? I think you, Noseman, you showed...
Yeah. So the answer is no, but
with a trick, yes.
It's
maybe
not.
we can share the link here to that stream. I don't know which stream it was. It wasn't us, the trainer stream, I think, and it was one of the Pyro ones.
It was one of the 2 Pyro ones.
Yeah.
The idea is the following: you have to get the Pyro to build to a certain point. Then you can save the VDB and take that one frame and use those values as the generating values. So I did I just say that I was going to do it, or did I show it? I showed a part of that. Again, contact me and I'll see. Well, I mean, this is simple. All right, share my screen. Share my screen. Let me quickly do. We're only half an hour.
You have it.
Okay. So let's quickly try this, and just to explain what's going on. Small sphere, right click, and let's go simulation tags and do a Pyro. Okay. So here's our Pyro, and we have 2 elements: the fire and the smoke. So I'm going to go to the object, the Pyro, and do density and temperature, nothing else. These 2 things. Well, with the velocity, we can use it to initiate some sort of a velocity. Let's take the velocity as well, because it participates in this whole thing. Now, let's assume I want to start from this frame over here. So let's 39. So I'm going to go 39 and cache the scene. I'm just going to go to a folder in my next screen and create a new folder. You can't see it because I don't want you to see things. Pyro, and I'm just double clicking and I'm saving. So it's going to save the simulation. Now, let me open that Pyro.
So is that now in your folder super secret stuff?
There you go, super secret stuff. So it was 39, wasn't it? Okay, so let's delete everything. Let's delete everything. Yeah, it's not a Mac, so I have to delete it using the backspace. Hope that no one caught that. Okay, so now we have this one VDB here that contains the data at the frame you requested. So let's make a new scene, and let's go to read. Let's get a volume loader over here. Get the volume loader. In the volume loader, I'm going to load this file. Let's see if it's going to. So this is my frame, right? That one VDB frame. So let's see how this is going to work. We have density, temperature, and velocity. I'm going to add a Pyro tag here. And because the values are recorded in their final value, what I need to do is enable density 1 from the density channel, no adding. And let me turn off. Let me see what this is. So it's doing that. It's generating some smoke. Let me set the temperature, I think, to 1, because it's going to. Is it going to use the temperature? This is what I did it with smoke. You may need to make this editable to get your 3 grids, and you make it editable twice, so you get these grids. I just press C twice to do this. And you add the density to the density. See, now I'm losing myself. Now I'm losing myself. So let's see if this is going to do anything. So it's emitting fire as well from this. So I don't want fire on this. I just don't want smoke. Yeah, I need to look at this one more time. But this is sort of the approach that the state of your Pyro is starting from this over here. I don't know, maybe if I put temperature and add another one and tell this to only emit temperature and 1, maybe. But the temperature is not temperature. I'm going to do this a couple more times, and if it doesn't work, no, it's not working the way I need to look at it again. But that would be the process. You use the grids themselves, because when you're emitting Pyro from a volume, I'm just going to say this to seem a bit more knowledgeable than I showed with my failure. So you can see we have a gradient volume here. If you make this Pyro, it will use the values generated by that. So it's going to create a lesser density inside and a higher density outside. So you can use volumes to create Pyro as well. We're going to get more smoke here. There you go. Get more smoke. And make sure that your Pyro, so voxel size 5, voxel size 5. So it needs to be the same. Yeah, so we're emitting basically from the volume of this object. And the method I was trying to show here unsuccessfully was to use that grid to generate the other grids. Yeah, if I find a solution that's scalable and reproducible, I think I may do a tutorial about that. Yes, that's all I have.
Yeah,
for now.
that's cool. I think we're gonna wrap up. There are still a few questions here. One of them I can answer like while wrapping up. So let me take the screen here. So there was one question from Pagulia. Do you have any tips for lighting up a scene where camera is moving anywhere? So in general, the tip is create your camera or animate your camera first and then set up your lighting. Because then you will create the lighting based on the camera view and make sure that the camera is locked then, or that you're going with the final camera movement. Everything else, when it comes to making stuff looking good, go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. And a few weeks ago, we had Nick Campbell himself from Grayscale Gorilla as a guest at Ask the Trainer. And we were talking about, or mainly he was talking about, like really cool things to improve renderings, to make them look good. And he was going through a framework they created, or they established at Grayscale Gorilla, which is just perfect. So it has all the things that you need to consider in there. And he showed very good examples for everything. And this is where you can learn a lot about rendering. So especially making rendering like really look nice and appealing and so on. He's sharing useful tips that are that you can apply to every renderer. So they work for Redshift, they work for standard, physical, for everything. All right, so let's wrap up. So if you want to see more of our cool events, then go to the Maxon events page. So maxon.net/events. And you can find it here under news events. And we have a few more shows coming up. Some of them are live streams, others are in-person events. The live streams are all for free. So tomorrow we're going to have VFX and Chill. Definitely check that out. On Monday, we're going to have another Demystifying Post-Production webinar about Universe for editors. So check that out. And on Tuesday, Ellie is going to have another live breakdown of the project. You can see here, it's about great looking textures in Redshift. What a great title. And yeah, make sure that next week we have an Ask the Trainer special. And I cannot tell you a lot about it, but I can already tell you that it's going to be exciting. So definitely check that out. All right. Also, there is Max on Color the Thursday after the Ask the Trainer special, and a lot of other cool stuff. So then the next thing, whenever you wanted to watch a live stream and you were late or you couldn't make it, always go to the Maxon Training Team YouTube channel. This is where we store and publish all the recordings of our live shows. So yeah, as I said, check that out. If you are new to any of the products in the Maxon universe, you can always go to cineversity.maxon.net and find a Getting Started series for every single one of our programs. And yeah, then we also have this nice merch shop here. And there is a coupon code along with that. Let me bring up the link here again for the merch shop. I think Ellie's gonna share it in the chat as well, right? I hope so. And yeah, go there. You're asked to type in a code, and you're going to use this one for it, Universe for Editors, and then you can log in and you can order 1 t-shirt for free and just pay for the shipping. All right, that's pretty much it for today.
I have something to say.
Yes.
If you enjoy the show and find value in that, please spread the word. We do as much as we can. Maxon has a lot of social media impact and all that, but share it with your colleagues, with your friends, and hang out, talk in the background, because I think that everyone's missing an opportunity here. Number one, you're part of a group, a lot of you that watches us often. It's a virtual version of going to the shows and all that. And I've seen so many interesting collaborations happen in front of my eyes. The minute we introduced 2 artists that were presenting with Maxon, and that turned into a friendship, into a collaboration, into awards, prizes, and all that. And this is an online version of that. It's a streaming version of that. Invite more people, talk to each other, exchange details. This is an industry where everyone works alone, but there's absolutely, in the most cases, there's always someone else involved. Everything works as a team. Unless you're a sole artist and you do your thing, then your only collaborator is your client or the person that's going to see your art. It's never just one person. So taking the opportunity to invite more people and to get in touch with each other. I mean, try and treat this as a social event. I know I prefer to meet people in face to face, but take the opportunity to share the information and invite people and meet each other. Don't miss on that opportunity.
Those are great last words.
And you have common interests. That's the thing. You're all here for pretty much the same reason. That means you do have a lot of common ground in what you do, what your aspirations are, how you think, spanning technology, art, and everything in between. So, yeah, take the opportunity that's given.
Yes, do it now. Chat with the others. All right, cool. So, see you next time, everyone. See you tomorrow. See you Monday. See you Tuesday. And see you on the next Ask the Trainer special edition next Thursday.
The Effects and Chill tomorrow.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.